What the fuck? How's it going, y'all? Fans of the channel know that I've been a big fan of Invincible for a long time simply because I'm also a big fan of Robert Kirkman. But what I find interesting is that out of every show I covered on the channel, Invincible is the first show to get its next season. And with how short the break was between these two seasons, I was a little nervous for what could happen with the animation style. And while we won't really be getting into any comic spoilers in this video, we will be going over how this episode essentially went from 0 to 100 immediately. I genuinely thought Nolan's confrontation with his past was going to be the big moment of the episode, with potentially the per usual cliffhanger they usually add. But oh boy, was I wrong. This episode started off strong when we got to see Nolan reunite with his family that he traumatized so heavily. And while I really appreciated how some characters approach Nolan cautiously like Art did, I really enjoy what they continue to do with the character of Debbie. This character every season somehow gets me so engaged in her storyline as just a regular, everyday, normal person trying to function in this crazy superhero-filled world. Debbie, being one of the more grounded characters, of course throws Nolan's apology right back in his face. And while I won't rehash the entire argument here, I think it's very obvious Debbie was in the right. It's good Nolan is apologizing and trying to make right what he did wrong, but it's obvious words aren't going to be enough to fix this situation. Like in the real world, sometimes these things take both time and effort, and even then, it's not guaranteed to eventually fix. And man, shout out Sandra Oh for that incredible performance.
Him!
Debbie.
Still, it's during all these conversations, while Nolan was simply flying in the backyard, that I couldn't help but wonder, wouldn't Cecil be observing them doing all this? And of course that was proven correct later when they leave the planet and we realize Cecil was gearing up for a defense. Cecil continues to be one of, if not my favorite character within this series, simply because of how he goes about things. I feel like this show tries to push this narrative that Cecil oversteps and crosses a lot of boundaries, which sure, on paper, you could definitely agree with. However, I think considering the context of the situation, his monitoring of superheroes and spying on them kinda seems fair. Is it right? No, but it does seem like the natural conclusion a character like him would eventually come to. Don't forget, we have characters like Batman who essentially does the same thing to the Justice League. In my eyes, so far, honestly I think Cecil is the perfect man for the job. And each season I keep thinking that Mark or the Viltrumites are gonna push him into being a little bit more cruel. But even in this season, he seems to be approaching Mark as openly as he can. I also enjoyed the development we were getting with both Nolan and Oliver. While I completely understand why Nolan would want to avoid seeing Oliver altogether, maybe even in his own head justifying that he isn't owed as much of an apology, it's very obvious, despite how understandable, it's the wrong thing to do. With Mark reiterating the fact that this is Nolan's chance to put forth the effort and really bare his teeth through the mud and guck and I don't even know what I'm getting at. Basically have a relationship with his son. Oliver, who's a character that I keep going into the season expecting to be annoyed by, but am just impressed with almost every scene he has. So many live action shows struggle to write kids. Either they're extremely annoying and in a horror series getting people killed, or they're like hyper intelligent and able to build a rocket ship in under 3 minutes. Oliver is the type of character who makes mistakes and you can see them in these small little moments, but the show doesn't really dwell on it. He is growing as a person and is likely to learn these things with more experience. That coupled with the fact that we already see Mark kind of learn these same lessons in his rise to being a hero, so we don't really need to see it again with Oliver. All in all, I just feel like how they're navigating Oliver's rise to being a superhero is done super well. I also like how this season has really balanced out its animation style. If you notice with the last season, there was some very rough animation spots, but it all led to a pretty epic conquest fight that was a joy to see. But yet when it comes to this season, I notice in a lot of the episodes, they balance out a lot of their slower animation styles with some big impactful moments throughout the episode. A better example would be like last episode that took place in Hell. There was quite a few scenes where you can tell they were saving on the animation budget, but by the end of the episode, they had a pretty well animated fight. I'm still not quite sure how I feel about that whole episode in general, but man, when it comes to this episode, I was blown away. I was not expecting a Mark vs. Conquest rematch this early, and figured they'd save it for a season finale type of deal. And even when the fight initially started, I thought, oh, okay, it's not really as well animated as the last time, maybe this will end a little more anticlimactic. Either with the coalition side of things flying away, or with the Viltrumites being called back by Thrag or something. That being said, I did really enjoy how they were navigating fighting in space. Having to leverage different motions of their body to be able to provide the most impact behind their hits, as well as needing to take breaks to actually breathe because they are literally fighting in space, which I guess confirms the fact that Viltrumites in space just literally hold their breath the whole time. But then I'm also very confused how people telepathetically talk, because I thought only Alan could do that. Though it does kind of make sense that Viltrumites would have the same technology to be able to do so. But then I have to ask myself, how are Mark and Oliver talking? I don't know, maybe it's not something to pay too much attention to. Either way, like I said, for a big portion of this fight, the animation style seemed pretty par for the course. Nothing too incredible, nothing too disappointing, with the only real disappointing aspect being that of Tech Jacket. Maybe I should just bite the bullet and read the full comic series at this point, but I anticipated Tech Jacket being a lot more useful during that entire fight. And honestly, out of all the heroes they have on Earth, I'm surprised Tech Jacket was the one they decided to bring. If Adam Eve wasn't struggling with her powers, which I don't even know if Cecil knows about, surely she should have gone up there with them. I know Immortal is trying to retire and live a peaceful life, but he won't be able to live that if the Viltrumites eventually find their way. Honestly, it seems like Cecil would be on board with this whole coalition idea as well, potentially finding even more spacefaring heroes to go and help in this whole fight. Especially if the Viltrumites are going to be using what is the equivalent of just common foot soldiers. I don't know, I'm just so confused what part of Tech Jacket's armor is necessary for this war. Either way, things definitely ramped up in the fight when Mark and Conquest finally started to duke it out again. And unlike the fight from last season where they're punching and send each other flying through buildings and rocks, this fight was definitely more of a battle of endurance, with Mark immediately putting Conquest in a death grip chokehold, and Conquest flying across the planet trying to punch him off of himself. And that whole fight, I was just so nervous that Conquest was just gonna pierce his hand right through Mark's stomach. And that's exactly what he did. And my gosh, listening to those grotesque, awful sounds that just kept going, I can only describe that as to what can only be considered as the opposite of ASMR. Unless you're a serial killer, I guess. Which I'm not. But if you take away all the gross sounds of someone's guts being slowly ripped out of their stomach, you can hear some really solid voice acting from both Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Steven Yeun. And man, I really want to emphasize Steven Yeun one more time because those guttural screams were just too immersive, my goodness. Now, I probably won't be making any more Invincible videos until the season's officially over and I drop a review. Either way, I think this episode's definitely going down as my favorite of the entire series, simply because we had some well-earned, emotionally impactful moments, as well as an extremely well-animated fight sequence. And while I am super excited to see where the story's going to be going next, I probably won't be making any more videos on the show until the season's eventually over and I can drop a review. And man, you already know I'm going to be working on an edit for this season to top the last one.
It was an accident, but he made me do it. I didn't want to kill him. I didn't. I had to. I had no other choice. I wouldn't even keep you as a slave in my empire!
Go! Destroy everything in your path! Make them see Invincible! Make them fear Invincible! Make them hate!
You were given orders, and yet I find this planet unprepared for the arrival of our Viltrum Empire. Viltrumite heart. Show me your power. Show me your rage. Show me.
This has been an immense joy. I don't care how strong you are. I don't care how fast you are. I can see the future. You don't live to see tomorrow.
I'll never let...